This week I've been driving the 2020 BMW M8 Competition, and what a beast this thing is. This is definitely classified as a numbers car, and there are some pretty big numbers that go along with it. 617 horsepower. This, as spec'd, costs pretty close to $175,000. This is probably the most expensive M car I've ever driven, and it's right up there with the M760i as the most expensive BMW I've ever driven. It's pricey, but it has a lot of performance to back it. This is a little bit of a softer M car, okay? So this is a grand tourer. You know, you want to do long, high-speed journeys in this. It has carbon ceramic brakes. It has, this thing is all fully optioned out. Beautiful interior, amazing materials, gorgeous carbon fiber here up and down on the center console. You have a lot of drive modes, a lot of customization, a lot of ways you can program your driving experience. I have M2 programmed as the most, aggressive, most exciting, sporty drive modes, and then M1 is everything in comfort except for the engine is in Sport Plus for just the most aggressive throttle response. And you can hear, with this active exhaust, it makes some good noises. The Cars and Coffee crowd will be pleased. This M8 is painted in Java Green Metallic. It's a pretty insane color. It's a $5,500 option, I believe. I think it looks pretty mad, looks pretty cool. I think overall, this color aside, this is a pretty good looking coupe. I feel like with the way they've designed this car, the proportions and the size of it has been shrunk a little bit visually. I think, this looks a little bit shorter wheelbase, and it is, compared to the Grand Coupe. There isn't really much more usability, practicality to this M8 Coupe than you would get in your standard BMW M3 or M4. The back seats are pretty cramped, but slightly better than some of the competition. You do get the extra sporty driving experience, though, with this being the coupe. 4.4 liter V8, twin turbo. It's a beast. That's mated to an 8-speed automatic transmission. It does all the things. It dances the dance. It sings the song. It does the numbers, the power, the speed. But what I want to find out on this drive today is it fun to drive, and is it exciting to drive? Because for 175 grand, I feel like it should be. We're going to glaze over a lot of the standard walk-around stuff. There's all your usual BMW switchgear in here. Excellent materials, pretty nice sound system, wireless Apple CarPlay, your radar cruise and everything. Most of that stuff I've kind of turned off, but there's some neat little BMW M touches in here. Of course, you get the stitching and the buttons. You get M colors in the seat belt, which is quite nice. And the shifter's a little bit different. This is the standard M style shifter where it's over and forward for reverse, and then you push the shifter to the right to put it into drive. And otherwise you can use it as a kind of a sequential shifter most of the time, and you can also switch it over to manual mode by pushing it to the right again. You have your M buttons up here, and then you have your M mode button down here. And for what I can tell, that basically just changes your gauge display, where if you hold it, it turns it into track mode, and this screen turns off. You get in your head-up display a rev counter, a larger display of what gear you're in, all that good stuff. And that is separate from your M buttons, which is kind of cool. So you can customize those to your heart's content. I've mostly just been leaving this in road mode so I can see what my damper, steering, brake settings are. This has brake-by-wire for these carbon ceramics. I have it in the comfort mode. The sport mode is way too aggressive. You slam your face into the steering wheel. It's pretty powerful. There's a nice linearity to the comfort mode. And honestly, I prefer driving this car in its comfort mode. The handling is phenomenal. The directness and sharpness is quite impressive. Comfort mode is no longer this sloppy, wallowy mode and in this car it's actually quite good. So starting off, we'll just leave everything in comfort and efficient. This 8-speed automatic does a really nice job shifting gears. It's quick, it's responsive, it's relatively smooth in your just everyday driving mode. There's the occasional rough start from a stoplight, but for the most part, it's actually pretty good in the world of BMW M cars, which tend to be a little bit jerky. This has a more smooth and refined personality to it. You can hear there's a little bit of an aggressive pop and burble on the overrun. Some pops when you let off the throttle, but for the most part, besides the insane speed from this thing, the noises this makes are pretty reserved and pretty quiet. Even on the inside, it's not super loud. While we're here, let's do a quick launch control. This is one of the highlights of this car. 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds. Just insane. Unbelievably quick. The all-wheel drive system in this M8 is so well tuned, it's bonkers. It is so smooth off the line. There's not a tire chirp, there's not any wheel spin. It figures it all out, and it does it over and over again. Pretty awesome. Satisfying noises between gear shifts there. Again, this acceleration is just insane. It's pretty amazing what this car can do. There's a little pop and bang. And it can dance. This is pretty impressive handling around the corners. You can turn this into a little bit of a canyon carver with the press of a couple buttons. It can be a highway cruiser. It does it all pretty well. It does lack that sharpness and fine edge that M cars are known for. And it's just a little bit softer, a little bit more dulled. All of the G-forces and all of the speed is there. You can easily select the aggressiveness of your shifts and your transmission tuning. Here down on the shifter, that's nicely placed. You can treat it like a sequential transmission. The shifts are just bang on fast. It's amazing. Let's see how it does in automatic mode here around this entrance ramp. We've also had the exhaust mode turned on this entire time. Perfectly livable, perfectly daily drivable in its loudest setting. Steering is surprisingly direct and responsive. There's a ton of front end grip. You get just a little bit of a wiggle from the rear end under hard acceleration. Honestly, I'm sure this thing is fun in rear wheel drive mode, but I do like the security of all wheel drive with the power and capability that this thing has. I'm sure that this M8 does turn into a total drift machine. if you get one of these cars, be sure you have a place to enjoy it. Really, this is best enjoyed at speed, hustling it and really using the chassis tuning that BMW has put into this. One complaint that I do have is the head-up display is nearly impossible to see with polarized sunglasses on. I wish that's something that BMW and other luxury car makers would address at some point. Some manufacturers have gotten it right. Some cars you can see just a little bit in the head-up display, but in this it's pretty much invisible, which is kind of a disappointment, because I figure anyone who's going to be driving an M8 is going to have a nice pair of sunglasses on. One thing where BMW has gotten it right, though, is there's no wind buffeting with one window down, which is great. That little finger that sticks out here from the mirror eliminates all of that, which is great. It's a very nice feature for daily driving, something that you learn to appreciate when you live with this car just a little bit longer. This is an interesting car to drive because I found a lot of recent M products to be pretty harsh, pretty stiff, pretty uncomfortable to drive, to be honest, on the daily basis. And this is kind of in between a normal M car and like an Alpina B7 or something like that. This has that big body luxury feel. You have all the the high-end BMW switchgear in here, but at the same time you still get this just nice little blend of performance. I do wish this car had a little bit more personality to it. I think it's too much of a numbers car and not as much of an experience car, though the experience is going fast, and that's really where you enjoy this car, is when you're hauling ass. When you're hustling this thing, that's when you're having fun. That's when you're just being impressed by its capability and amazed by the number on the screen in front of you. Otherwise, on the day-to-day commute, this doesn't feel that much more special than anything else BMW's making. And for $175,000, I would hope that it would. So that's kind of my disappointment with this M8. Otherwise, it's pretty darn capable and pretty darn good. There is just a little bit missing, though, in terms of soul and personality that I think the other Germans, Mercedes and Porsche, get right. There's no doubt that this thing is way too fast to explore on the street. But then the problem is, if you take this to a track day, you're going to go through 20 grand worth of carbon ceramic brakes. So I think the ideal situation is you either have to enjoy this on the German Autobahn, or you need some really nice, wide open, empty canyons to hustle this thing. Matt Fair did a video on this on the Smoking Tire, and he was hauling, and there was no traffic. That's pretty much the ideal scenario here. Michigan roads are potholes. Not the best place to test a BMW M8, but it's all we have. I will say this would be a pretty comfortable car on a long journey. On the highway, it's quiet, it's refined, even with the exhaust set to loud mode. There's no strange resonance or anything coming through the cabin. This is a very comfortable Grand Tourer car, as it should be. I do find a lot of the infotainment and the usability of this to be overly complicated. There's just so much going on here between the buttons and the modes and the driving, experiences and the screens. It's a little bit too much. Maybe if I've owned this car for some time and I've got everything set to my liking, I still find it tedious to find what I want in the menus. The scroll wheel in the iDrive does work quite well. That is nice. This can be a touchscreen as well. Really, the high points here are the power and performance. This thing has so much capability and so much grip, so much impressive prowess on the road. It has pretty good curb appeal too. I've gotten a lot of looks and a lot of attention in this thing this week. A few people thought this was a Mustang based on the color probably. But everyone in a Cadillac CTS-V has tried to race me. And of course it has BMW power, which is usually underrated. So it's probably got a little bit more power than is advertised. While we're cruising, let's do a quick sound system test and see what this Bowers and Wilkins system sounds like. That gives you a pretty good idea of what this thing sounds like. Really nice clarity, great bass, great trebles. I mean, it's a Bowers and Wilkins high-end system. It performs as you would expect. Again, though, I think the price is really throwing me off on this car, because for 150 grand base price, 175 is tested, this thing should be the best. And I think it's just playing third fiddle to the Porsches and AMGs of this world. And at this price point, you don't want to be third place. You want to be the best. You want to be first place. So, also the fact that this doesn't quite feel as M-car as some of the other BMW products that have come out in recent years. It's a little bit softer. It's a little bit more, it's probably appropriate for what it is, being a Grand Tourer, but I was hoping for a little bit more excitement from this thing, with this being the M Competition model. I feel like the standard M8 would be a little bit dulled, and the Competition would have that extra knife edge. And that precision shows itself in the handling and the chassis tuning of this car, but otherwise it's not as exciting of an experience as I was hoping for. So a little bit of a mixed bag with this M8. It is technically very good, but as far as excitement factor, as far as emotional, would I want to own one of these? Do I find this is to be a desirable car? It's a very fast car, and that's kind of where it ends. It's very capable, it's very good, but I'm left a little bit numb after driving it this week. So hopefully BMW can start to inject a little bit more emotion into their cars. I feel like I'm over the power war. I'm over, you know, this numbers war, and I would like to get some more visceral, exciting cars from BMW. AMG is doing a really, really good job of making cars exciting. They sound great, they're visceral, they're sharp, they're precise. They're maybe not as comfortable, but they're pretty hardcore and they're pretty exciting to drive, and they're pretty desirable as a result. BMW is kind of in the middle. You've got the sharpness from the chassis, but kind of a dull powertrain that doesn't sound particularly inspiring. And Porsche's still just doing their thing. They're just doing everything well. So I think that's kind of where this M8 falls. And for what it is, I think it's a pretty good overall car. I do like BMW's high-end stuff. They always do a nice job with it. Can I afford a $175,000 M8? No. This thing has been cool to drive this week, but I did prefer the luxury and the usability of the B7 Alpina. That was pretty awesome. And if I wanted an 8 Series, I would probably swing for the M850, because that thing is just a nice sweet spot. And I did really enjoy the 840 as well. That was just a nice overall car. You get the 4-wheel steer in that, and it lacks some of the chassis capability of this and the tuning of this, but ultimately, unless if you're hustling at 10/10ths around every corner, you're not really going to notice the difference. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. You can hear this fan going off for days in here. This car will single-handedly heat your garage after you've turned it off, which is pretty cool. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.